Have you ever wondered what happens at a pet hospital in the middle of the night? Join me as I take you behind the scenes of my night shift, where we deal with everything from calming scared kittens to life-saving surgeries. Have you ever looked into the eyes of an animal and known, without words, that something wasn't right? Not just with them, but with the world around you? That's how my first night at Cedar Ridge 24/7 Pet Hospital began. The job listing had seemed ordinary enough. Night shift technician for a well-reviewed veterinary facility nestled at the edge of a quiet town. I'd worked in emergency vet clinics before. I thought I knew what I was getting into. But Cedar Ridge wasn't like any place I'd worked before. There was something off about it. Something no Yelp review or friendly receptionist could prepare me for. I arrived 10 minutes before my shift, just as the last tendrils of twilight faded from the sky. The building sat beneath a crooked line of pine trees that formed a dark canopy above its roof, as though nature itself leaned in to watch what happened inside. The structure was modern, clean, glass-fronted, but despite the warm lights pouring from the windows, it exuded a kind of sterile coldness. A copper plaque bolted beside the door read, "Cedar Ridge Veterinary Emergency, Compassion Through the Night." The font was fancy, almost too polished, and the words felt ironic even then. Inside, the waiting room was empty, but the humming lights buzzed like angry insects. The air carried a mix of antiseptic, wet fur, and something else, something faint, metallic, and wrong. "New guy, right?" asked a voice. I turned. A nurse stood at the counter, pale green scrubs soaked to the knees in something brownish. Her name tag read Lonnie. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yeah, I'm Cameron. Midnight to 8, she asked. I nodded. "Good. You'll want to memorize the shift rules before Dr. Heron comes out." She handed me a laminated card. The title read, "Night Shift Protocols, Cedar Ridge Pet Hospital. 1. Never enter the quiet room alone. 2. If a pet arrives with mismatched eyes, alert Dr. Heron immediately. 3. Patients in Kennel 4C are not to be fed. No exceptions. 4. If you hear barking from the supply closet, ignore it. The closet is always locked. 5. Do not let the owner in after 3:33 a.m. I read it twice. "What is this?" I asked, half laughing. Lonnie just shrugged. Strange rules for a strange place. Before I could push further, a large man emerged from the hallway, broad-shouldered, impeccably groomed, and wearing a coat too white to be real. "Dr. Heron." "Mr. Blake," he said, extending a hand. His grip was cold and too tight. "Welcome. We're grateful you joined our family. Follow the rules, and you'll do fine." I didn't know what to say. Something about his presence drained the air from the room. He led me past the front desk, through a maze of pristine hallways and treatment rooms. Medical monitors blinked quietly. Kennels lined the walls, most occupied by drowsy animals, some wrapped in bandages, others trembling in silence. A black cat watched me from its enclosure, unblinking. Its eyes were the same color, but I could have sworn one blinked slower than the other. We stopped outside a steel door labeled Quiet Room. Dr. Heron's hand paused on the knob. "You won't have to go in here tonight," he said. "But if you do, never alone." "Understood." I nodded. My throat felt dry. "Excellent. Lonnie will finish your orientation. Don't forget the rules." He left me there, beside that closed door. I heard nothing from inside. No animal cries, no equipment sounds. But something about that silence felt hungry. Lonnie showed me the basics. Vital stations, supply locations, how to operate the lifts and monitors. It was standard, yet every time we passed certain rooms, like Kennel 4C, she sped up her walk, like her body instinctively knew to stay away. I try not to ask too many questions that first hour, but unease settled in my stomach like sour milk. Around 1:17 a.m., we got our first emergency. A frantic young woman burst in, holding a small pug wrapped in a towel. He just collapsed. Please, he's barely breathing. Lonnie sprang into action. I followed her lead, prepping the oxygen mask and helping her start 4 fluids. The dog's tongue was blue. His tiny chest spasmed weakly. As we worked, I noticed something odd. The pug's eyes didn't match. One was a normal, glossy brown. The other was milky white and leaking something black. Lonnie, I whispered. Rule 2. Her hands froze for just a moment. Then she stood and hit the red call button. Dr. Heron arrived 30 seconds later, gliding more than walking. He didn't ask questions, just looked at the dog, then at the woman holding him. You've done well bringing him here, he said. His voice was low and oddly melodic. But I'll need you to come with me. What? No, I'm staying with Pogo. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Her protest ceased instantly, like a switch flipped in her brain. She followed him through a rear hallway. The dog, still unconscious, remained on the table. Shouldn't we? I started. No, Lonnie interrupted. Her face had gone pale. Just wait. Minutes passed. The pug stirred once, then went utterly still. Lonnie gently picked it up and walked into a side room marked specimens. She didn't come out for a long time. At 2:54 a.m., a low growl echoed from the supply closet. I remember the rule. Ignore it. But it wasn't just a growl. It was a scratching, then a thud, then a voice. Not barking anymore, but words slurred and wrong. Cameron. I froze. The hallway lights dimmed, as if whatever was inside that closet had sucked some of the electricity away. The handle twitched. I backed away, heart pounding. I glanced around for cameras. Surely someone else saw this. But the hospital was silent. All the other kennels held their breath. Lonnie reappeared then, moving stiffly, like a marionette. Her eyes flicked to the closet, then back to me. You heard it. I nodded. Don't answer, no matter what it says. She walked me back to the staff lounge and sat me down. Everyone hears something their first night, she said. The closet knows new people. It tests them, but you didn't open the door. That's good. What the hell is this place? I asked. And what was wrong with that dog? Why did the owner just follow Dr. Heron like that? None of this is. She raised a hand. You want answers? Make it through a week. Then ask. People who don't follow the rules don't last long enough to learn why they exist. Before I could argue, a high-pitched squealing sound rang out. Lonnie's pager buzzed. Emergency in treatment bay 2, she muttered. We ran down the hall. The lights flickered as we passed Kennel 4C. Through the barred door, I caught a glimpse of something. It had fur, claws, but it was no dog, no cat. It was too big, its body wrong in shape and posture, eyes too far apart, mouth too wide. It grinned at me. I blinked, and it was gone. Don't look in that kennel, Lonnie warned. Ever. Just keep walking. I didn't sleep the next morning. Not after everything I'd seen. That night, I'd walked into a pet hospital, but it wasn't a place of healing. It was a threshold between this world and something else. A place where animals came to be fixed, and sometimes weren't the same when they left. And I had 4 more nights to go. By the second night, I thought I was prepared. I arrived at 11:58 p.m. with strong coffee, a cleared mind, and an uneasy stomach. The image of that pug's mismatched eyes still haunted me. And whatever that thing in Kennel 4C had been, it was burned into my memory like a smudge you can't wipe from a mirror. The reception area was dimly lit, as though even the bulbs were too afraid to glow at full strength. Lonnie wasn't at the desk this time. Instead, a different tech greeted me. Older, male, with thinning hair and heavy eyes. His name tag read Ross. "You're the new night guy," he muttered, barely glancing up from a clipboard. "Name's Ross. I've been here long enough to know better." "Know better than what?" He just pointed at the laminated card still tucked into the corner of the counter. The rules. Untouched. Unmoving. Like they had been waiting for me. "First night's always a circus," Ross said. "Second night's worse. That's when the hospital figures out you might stay." His tone was dry, emotionless, but I noticed how he tapped the side of his pen against the fifth rule. "Do not let the owner in after 3:33 a.m. Has that ever happened?" Ross didn't answer. He just walked off toward the kennels. I was left alone in the lobby for a while. Everything around me hummed with quiet energy, like the walls were listening. The shadows stretched differently here. Longer. Sharper. Eventually, the doors slid open and the first patient of the night arrived. A golden retriever with bite wounds along its flank, carried in by a man with blood on his sleeves and panic in his eyes. "Coyotes," he said. He ran off and came back like this. "Please, I don't know how he's even alive. Ross, I gotta work immediately." The dog, named Bixby, was barely conscious. As we cleaned the wounds, I realized something unsettling. The bites weren't from a coyote. They were too wide, with deep punctures unlike any natural canine I'd seen. Some of them looked scorched. "Did you see what attacked him?" I asked. The man hesitated. "It had hooves, like a deer." He shook his head, his eyes wide. "No, it stood on two legs. It screamed." Ross didn't blink. "You'll need to stay in exam room too. Dr. Heron will want to talk to you." The man didn't argue, almost like he was already forgetting what he saw. When Ross and I were alone again, I finally asked, "Do people actually believe this stuff? About the animals changing? About the other things?" Ross gave a bitter laugh. "Believe it or not, doesn't matter. Things happen here, Cam. They've always happened. What you saw on your first night, well, it's just the start. And if you think the animals are bad, wait until you meet the owners." At 2:40 a.m., I was checking vital logs when I heard it, a high-pitched keening from Kennel 4C. Not a bark, not a whine, a sound that vibrated inside my skull. The lights above flickered, and for a moment, I saw a shape pressed against the kennel door. Long limbs, hunched shoulders, a glint of eyes that looked reptilian. I turned away. I remembered Lonnie's warning. Just keep walking. But then I saw something worse. The door to Kennel 4C was unlocked. "Ross," I called out. My voice cracked. He appeared behind me, holding a steel rod with a hooked end and a canister of what I assumed was tranquilizer. His face was pale. "Go back to the front," he said. "What about you?" "I've done this before." I hesitated, but one look at his face, at the sweat beading on his forehead, told me this wasn't a bluff. As I retreated, the lights went out entirely. For a few long seconds, I heard only Ross's slow footsteps. Then a hiss, a shriek. Something collided with metal. Then silence. The lights came back a minute later. Ross stood alone in the hallway, breathing heavily, scratches down his arm. "Rule 3, he muttered. "No matter what, don't feed it. We forgot to double lock the latch after meds last night." "What is it?" He didn't respond, just walked away, bleeding. 3:12 a.m. I was back at the desk when I heard the first knock. Not the buzzer, not the door chime. A knock. Deliberate. Slow. 3 knocks. I stood, peering through the glass doors. A woman stood on the other side, motionless. She wore a long, gray coat. Her hair was damp. Her face, something about her face felt frozen. Not expressionless, just stuck, like she was a wax figure. "Please," she said through the glass. "I need help. My cat, he's sick." She held a pet carrier, but from here, I couldn't see inside. I checked the clock. 3:32 a.m. 1 minute until the threshold. My fingers hovered over the lock button. Then I remembered. Do not let the owner in after 3:33 a.m. She knocked again. Harder. "Please," she whispered. "He's not breathing." I turned to grab my radio to call Ross, but the signal crackled. Nothing. When I turned back, she was staring directly at me. Not at the door. At me. Her eyes were solid black. 3:33 a.m. The hallway lights dimmed. She pressed her hand to the glass. Then she smiled. I stepped away, heart pounding. Something in my chest told me, do not open that door. Her mouth moved again, though I couldn't hear the words. But it didn't matter, because the carrier in her hands was now moving, twitching violently. Something inside slammed against the plastic sides, distorting the shape. It wasn't a cat anymore. I stumbled backward. When I looked again, she was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Just gone. By 4 a.m., I finally found Ross again. He was in the staff lounge, his arm bandaged, sipping black coffee like nothing had happened. "She came," I said. "Who?" "The owner. The one from Rule 5. He blinked. "Did you let her in?" "No." He exhaled. "Good. Sometimes they pretend to be normal. Sometimes they're better at it than others. What happens if you open the door?" He looked at me for a long time. Then, the hospital stops being a hospital, and you stop being you. He didn't elaborate. At 5:45 a.m., a calico kitten was dropped off, limp and cold. Lonnie returned to help at the intake. She hadn't spoken much all night, and her presence was a quiet comfort amidst the storm of the evening. The kitten had no pulse. Its body was rigid. "Dead on arrival," I said softly. Lonnie just shook her head. "Hold it." She gently placed the kitten in my arms. I felt nothing at first, but then, faint warmth. A heartbeat. I looked at her wide-eyed. "Some things here die, and come back," she said. "What?" She didn't answer, just turned and walked away, the kitten stirring slightly in my hands. I clocked out at 8 a.m. exactly. My car sat beneath the edge of the looming pine trees. The morning sun should have brought relief, but the air still felt wrong. Stagnant, like the night hadn't truly ended. Before I left, I looked back at the hospital. For a moment, I thought I saw something moving behind the glass door. A dark silhouette, watching. It lifted one hand and knocked 3 times, and I realized the rules weren't there to keep the animals safe. They were there to keep us safe from whatever else came through those doors. By my 3rd night at Cedar Ridge 24/7 Pet Hospital, the rules had etched themselves into my brain. Never enter the quiet room alone. Mismatched eyes mean trouble. Don't feed the thing in Kennel 4C. Ignore the voices from the supply closet. Never, ever, open the door after 3:33 a.m. I kept reminding myself that it was just a job. Check vitals. Clean wounds. Monitor patients. Administer meds. That's what I was trained for. That's what this place advertised. But Cedar Ridge didn't care about resumes. It only cared if he could survive. The hospital was unnaturally quiet when I arrived at 11:55 p.m. No animal sounds. No barking, whining, or rustling. The silence was the kind that sits heavy in the air, dense, like fog that you can't breathe through. Lonnie wasn't in the lobby. Neither was Ross. The desk was unmanned. The main hallway lights dimmed to a soft amber glow. Something felt wrong from the start. I took a deep breath, stepped behind the desk, and pulled up the shift log. Patient intakes. 11:30 p.m. Doberman. Severe lacerations. Bay 3. 10:47 p.m. Siamese cat. Vomiting plus lethargy. Observation room. 9:20 p.m. Stray. Species unknown. Quarantine. Dr. Heron only. That last one wasn't normal. Before I could ask anyone about it, a high-pitched yelp came from the east wing. I grabbed gloves and a flashlight and moved quickly. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and something else, like burned plastic. I turned the corner and nearly ran into Ross. His face was drawn and sweaty, and his arms were trembling. Bay 3, he said flatly. Don't go in. What? Why not? He opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. Just don't. But I didn't listen. The patient log had said Doberman. Severe lacerations. I'd handled worse. I pushed into Bay 3 and froze. The Doberman lay on the table, strapped down by thick leather restraints. Its wounds were deep, jagged slashes that pulsed unnaturally, like they breathed. But it wasn't the injuries that stopped me. It was the dog's face. Its eyes weren't just mismatched, they were inverted. One was pure white, the other pure black. Not blind, not diseased, inverted, like someone had turned them inside out. It lifted its head, even though its neck was broken. Then it spoke. Not a growl, not a bark, but words. You're new here. I stumbled back, knocking over a tray. Ross was suddenly beside me, dragging me out of the room, his hands like vices. Did you feed it? He snapped. No, I didn't touch it. His grip loosened slightly. Good. Heron will deal with it later. I couldn't breathe. My chest was tight, my legs numb. Ross shoved a paper cup of water into my hands. Don't enter a treatment bay without checking the vitals log. And next time you see a note that says Heron only, take the hint. After that, the night spiraled. A woman arrived around 12:30 a.m. with a box of kittens. 4 of them. But something was wrong. They didn't move. Didn't mewl. They just stared, silent and alert, like tiny statues. We found them in the woods, the woman said, her voice tremulous. Their mother was gone. We wanted to help. When I reached into the box, one of the kittens blinked, vertically, like a reptile. I pulled back. Ma'am, these aren't normal. She nodded slowly, eyes wide. I know. Ross took over. He wore thick leather gloves and used a long pair of tongs to lift one of the creatures into a reinforced crate. What are they? I asked quietly. He didn't answer, but I saw the label he slapped on the crate. Species. Unknown. Status. Observational. Quarantine level 2. As the woman left, I glanced back at the remaining kittens. One of them was smiling. At 1:45 a.m., I began the hourly vital checks. I moved down the line of standard patients. Dogs recovering from surgery, cats on 4 drips, the occasional rabbit or ferret tucked into warm beds. Those were the normal ones, the ones I clung to. And then came Kennel 4C. The door was closed, padlocked, but the temperature dropped 10 degrees the moment I approached. I didn't look inside, but I heard scratching, followed by a sound I'll never forget. like something breathing through its skin. The overhead speaker crackled once, then again, then a whisper, broken and hollow. Cameron. I backed away, refusing to look. I reminded myself, Rule 3. Do not feed it. Rule 4. Ignore the voices. And then the lights behind me flickered out, just for a second. But that second was enough. Something pressed against the other side of the kennel gate. Heavy, wet, curious. I turned and ran. At 2:30 a.m., Lonnie finally arrived. Her hair was soaked, her clothes wrinkled, as though she had just stepped out of a swamp. Sorry, she mumbled. I was delayed. She didn't elaborate, and I didn't ask. She joined me for the next check on the Siamese cat in Observation Room A. It was curled in its bed, unmoving. I approached slowly and reached to stroke its fur. Lonnie caught my wrist mid-motion. Look at its mouth, she whispered. I leaned in. The cat's mouth was open just a crack. And inside, past the fangs and tongue, were tiny teeth. Human teeth. Rows of them. I jerked my hand back, heart slamming in my chest. What is this place? I asked again, my voice almost breaking. It's not what. It's when, Lonnie said softly. Cedar Ridge doesn't exist the same way at night. It's porous, open. Sometimes the wrong thing slipped through. Slipped through from where? She just gave me a look, one that said, You're not ready for that answer. The routine didn't stop, though. At 3:10 a.m., a husky was rushed in by two men claiming it had stopped breathing. As we began resuscitation, I noticed its fur didn't look right. It shimmered under the light, like oil on water. Then I saw its tongue. It was forked, not injured. Natural. Ross made a call. Dr. Heron arrived within minutes. He didn't even touch the dog, just stared into its eyes. Then he turned to us and said, Take it to the quiet room. I'd never seen inside. I didn't want to. But when Lonnie wheeled the gurney toward the steel door, the husky opened its eyes, pure white, and grinned. It said nothing, but I swear it looked straight at me. At 3:33 a.m., a delivery truck pulled up. That's not uncommon. We receive shipments sometimes, meds, food, specialized tools. But this truck was marked with no logos, no license plate, just matte black metal and a refrigerated rear compartment. The driver never got out. Ross and Lonnie moved like they'd rehearsed it. They opened the back, pulled out a large silver cage draped in a white cloth, and wheeled it inside. I caught a glimpse beneath the sheet. It had hooves and a collar. That was the worst part. Someone owned this thing. Don't speak to it, Ross warned. What? He looked at me with hollow eyes. Because it will remember your name. At 5 a.m., the emergency alarms triggered again. This time it was an owl, feathers scorched, one wing broken. It had flown straight through the front doors, shattering the glass like a missile. I held it as Lonnie set the splint. It didn't flinch. It didn't hoot. It just stared up at me, huge golden eyes. And then it spoke, not with sound but inside my head. You're almost ready. What? I gasped aloud. Lonnie looked at me sharply. What did it say? I hesitated. You heard it. I heard your silence. That's worse. We released the owl just before dawn. It didn't fly away, just vanished midair like smoke on the wind. By 8 a.m., I was back in the parking lot. The sun rose, and everything looked normal again. But I knew better. The truth is, there's no such thing as a typical night at Cedar Ridge. Every shift pushes deeper into the strange. Every hour stretches the limits of what you believe is real. And I had 2 more nights to go. There are emergencies, and then there are Cedar Ridge emergencies. In a normal animal hospital, An emergency might be a blocked airway, a seizure, a car accident. Urgent, yes, but familiar. There are protocols, steps, and outcomes. At Cedar Ridge, those rules rarely apply. Because when something truly goes wrong here, it doesn't bleed like it should. It doesn't breathe like it should. And sometimes, it doesn't even belong in this world. By the time my fourth night shift began, I no longer hoped for normalcy. I simply hoped to survive the unknown. The moment I walked through the doors 11:58 p.m., I felt it, an electricity in the air, thick like a storm brewing just beneath the surface. The hospital lights pulsed faintly. The front desk computer flickered, displaying a screen I'd never seen before. Emergency lockdown protocol engaged. Ross, I called out. No answer. Lonnie, silence. I heard something, a rhythmic thud like footsteps, then a dragging noise coming from the hallway beyond ICU. I followed it slowly, heart pounding. My shoes squeaked softly against the linoleum as I passed the usual treatment rooms. All were dark, empty. Then I saw the blood. Smears of it trailed down the corridor, thick and bright, leading toward the surgical wing. And at the end of the trail, Lonnie. She was on her knees in front of the double doors to Surgery Room B, one hand clutched tightly around her side where blood bloomed beneath her scrub top. Her other hand gripped a scalpel like a lifeline. Her face was pale, drenched in sweat, and her eyes, wide, disbelieving. I rushed toward her. Lonnie, what happened? Back, she hissed. Stay back. I froze. There's something inside, she whispered. Came in during transfer. It wasn't sedated properly. Ross was trying to get it under control. I tried to warn him. What was it? Her hand trembled as she pressed it tighter to her ribs. It was listed as a mountain lion, but it had hands, Cam. Hands like a person. Then the doors behind her groaned. A soft thud. Something pressed against the glass. A shadow, tall and narrow. I could hear its breathing, ragged and gurgling. Then a tap. 3 slow taps. I grabbed Lonnie's arm and helped her up. We need to get you to the break room. Get that looked at. No, she said through clenched teeth. I can't leave the door. It knows. If no one watches it, it'll find a way out. Where's Ross? She didn't answer. But I knew. Whatever was in that surgical room, it had already taken one of us. I tightened my grip on her arm. We're not staying here. If it gets out, we're dead anyway. Reluctantly, she let me guide her back to the staff lounge. I barricaded the door with a heavy rolling cart and knelt beside her on the tile. Her breathing was shallow, and the bleeding hadn't stopped. That's when the emergency pager went off. Code Violet. Base 6. Patient distress. The screen flickered, then glitched. Code Violet. Quiet room. Unauthorized entry detected. I stared at the display. Unauthorized. My stomach dropped. Someone had entered the quiet room, and they were still inside. I left Lonnie with a compress and the emergency med kit and made my way down the back hallway toward the quiet room. The steel door was wide open. Inside, the fluorescent lights sputtered and buzzed. The air smelled metallic, like iron and ozone. Something had shorted the cameras. Static flared on the wall monitor. And then I saw the intruder. He was young, early 20s maybe, wearing a navy hoodie and jeans. He held a phone up with the flashlight on, pointing into the corner where an animal, something like a wolf, but not quite, lay chained to the floor. Its fur was too sleek, like stretch vinyl. Its eyes were glassy, like marbles. I told you, the kid whispered into his phone, recording. This is what they're hiding. This is not a dog. This is some kind of experiment. The creature twitched. I stepped into the room. Hey, you need to get out of here. He turned, startled. Who the hell are you? I work here, and you're not supposed to be inside this room. You keep monsters in cages, and I'm the bad guy. The creature behind him shifted again, rising, slowly, its joints popping unnaturally. Its eyes focused now. A low growl built in its chest. I took a step toward him. You need to leave. Right now. You don't understand what you're dealing with. But it was too late. The chain snapped. It moved faster than any dog or wolf could, lunging for the intruder's throat. The phone clattered to the ground. The room erupted in screams, cut short by a wet, crunching sound. I slammed the panic button. Steel shutters began lowering around the perimeter of the room, but not fast enough to keep the thing from bolting past me and into the hallway. It left a bloody trail behind. The hospital shifted in its energy. The walls creaked like they were breathing. Lights began dimming in every hallway. The emergency generator kicked in, but the hum was weaker than usual. Cam, Lonnie's voice crackled over the walkie. Something's happening. I think it's trying to open the front door. What? That's impossible. It can't. It's wearing the intruder's face. I ran. By the time I reached the lobby, the thing stood in front of the glass entrance. It looked almost human now, wearing the hoodie, same sneakers, even the same hair. But its face was too smooth, too symmetrical. The eyes, still that deep marble glass. When it turned to look at me, the expression was neutral, blank. Then it raised its hand and mimicked knocking. 3 times. The door groaned, but held. It wasn't 3:33 a.m. It couldn't come in, but it wanted to. Ross appeared suddenly, blood-soaked and pale but alive. Where is it? I pointed. Lobby. It's wearing his face. Is the quiet room locked again? Yes. Then we've got one shot. He pulled a vial from his pocket and jammed it into a dart. This won't kill it, but it'll freeze its cells, slow it down enough to get it back in the cage. Together, we approached. The creature watched us, head tilted. Then it said something in my voice. Cam, it's okay. Let me in. Ross fired. The dart hit dead center in its shoulder. It didn't flinch, but within seconds, its movement slowed. The skin along its arms began cracking like ice. It stumbled backward, hit the wall, and collapsed in a motionless heap. Ross and I locked it in one of the underground containment units, deep below the hospital, where only Dr. Heron has keys. We didn't speak for a long time. Finally, Ross muttered, "That's not the worst we've seen." I couldn't imagine what would be worse. At 5:30 a.m., as the sun threatened the horizon, we were hit with one final emergency. An old man arrived carrying a pet carrier. "My dog," he said softly. "She passed 2 nights ago, but she came back. She won't stop moving. Her eyes, she's not my Daisy anymore." We looked inside the carrier. The dog was perfectly still, dead, until she opened her eyes. They weren't just mismatched. They were human. She looked at me and whispered, "Help me." I slammed the carrier shut and turned to Ross. "What do we do?" He looked genuinely afraid. "We call Heron." Dr. Heron arrived 10 minutes later, but not alone. He was accompanied by 2 figures in long coats. No names. No faces I recognized. They spoke in a language I didn't understand and carried Daisy into the quiet room without a word. The steel door sealed behind them. I never saw that dog again, or the old man. When I left the hospital at the end of the shift, the air was too still. Even the birds didn't chirp. A strange fog hovered over the parking lot, thick and low, refusing to lift as dawn broke. I sat in my car for a while, watching the treetops sway in a wind I couldn't feel. I thought about the creature mimicking the intruder, the wolf with hands, the dog with human eyes, the lockdown, the knock, 3 taps, over and over again in my dreams and my bones. There are emergencies, and then there are the things that Cedar Ridge calls emergencies. I had survived 4 nights, but the last one was still to come, and something deep inside told me that would be the worst of all. By the 5th night, I wasn't sure who or what I was anymore. Sleep had become a memory. Food lost its taste. My hands trembled even when I wasn't afraid. And worst of all, the rules that once felt like strict, finite commandments now seemed like a vague suggestion made by something desperately trying to protect us from the unexplainable. Something that knew we weren't equipped for what really roamed the sterile halls of Cedar Ridge. When I stepped into the lobby at 11:57 p.m., the hospital was already in motion. Not bustling, not loud, but moving. Machines hummed lowly. Lights flickered in a heartbeat rhythm. And I could feel it, like the walls were holding their breath for what this final night would bring. Lonnie was waiting at the front desk. Her eyes were darker than usual. She hadn't changed clothes. Dried blood still clung to the corner of her sleeve. "Tonight's different," she said without greeting. I nodded. "Al, there won't be a lockdown. Not unless we fail." "Fail what?" Ross appeared beside her, carrying a folder marked red tape. His face was even paler than usual. He handed me the file without a word. Inside was a single page. Subject: 001. Our origin. Unknown status. Returning. Arrival window: 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. Containment required. Do not show fear. Do not speak unless addressed. Do not make eye contact. If subject 001 enters the quiet room willingly, shut the door and initiate burn protocol. "Who is it?" I whispered. "Not a who," Lonnie said. "A what?" "Then what is it?" Her voice lowered, almost reverent. "The first patient." The night began deceptively calm. A labradoodle came in around midnight, bloated from ingesting a plastic chew toy. I performed a stomach pump myself. It went smoothly by Cedar Ridge standards. A pair of injured raccoons arrived next, clipped by a delivery truck. Both survived, both discharged before 1:30 a.m. For a little while, it felt like a real vet hospital. But the stillness underneath everything, the quiet that stretched too long, too deep, never went away. Like the whole building was waiting. Lonnie and Ross barely spoke. They hovered near the quiet room most of the shift, prepping something I didn't understand. Heat lamps, chemical tanks, layers of symbols carved into metal plates bolted to the floor. "I thought we didn't believe in rituals," I said. Ross didn't look up. "We don't, but it does." At 2:01 a.m., the lights flickered and stayed dim. A low hum, deep, electric, began in the walls. The front door opened on its own, and a creature stepped inside. It didn't look like a monster. It looked like a child, barefoot, maybe 8 years old, wearing a white hospital gown smeared with dirt. Hair matted, skin like wax. No expression, but its eyes were mirrors. Perfect, gleaming, reflective. When it looked at me, I saw myself, twisted, warped, rotting. I staggered back and looked away. Lonnie gripped my arm so hard it hurt. "Do not speak," she hissed. "Do not let it see your fear." The child walked slowly down the main hallway. Its bare feet left no prints, no sound, but each step made the lights around it flicker and bend. It paused beside an empty exam room and tilted its head toward the door. Without a word, Ross opened it for it. It entered, sat quietly on the steel table, and waited. Time broke after that. I swear an hour passed while I stood watching the room through the glass, only to find that the clock had moved forward 2 minutes. The child, subject 001R, sat still the whole time. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. Why do we have to contain it? I asked Lonnie. She didn't look at me. Because it doesn't just hurt animals. It brings them back. Back how? Ross answered instead. Wrong. Always wrong. I thought of the pug from night one. Of the kitten with human teeth. Of the owl that whispered in my mind. All of them. Echoes. Was this thing the source? At 3:11 a.m., it rose from the table and walked toward the quiet room on its own. We followed behind. The hospital itself seemed to lean inward. Lights bending, walls creaking, shadows stretching unnaturally long. Even the monitors in the surgical rooms began to beep irregularly, picking up heartbeats where no patients existed. The child entered the quiet room. We stood outside, staring. It's never done that before, Lonnie whispered. It wants something, Ross muttered. Then the child turned and spoke. Its voice was everyone's voice. Mine, Lonnie's, Ross's, my mother's. My childhood dog's bark. Everything I'd ever heard, screaming out from one tiny throat. Cameron, would you like to see what comes after? Every instinct in my body screamed to run. Instead, I shut the door, locked it, and threw the lever that started the burn protocol. The room didn't catch fire. Instead, it turned white, blindingly white, as if all color, all sound, all matter was stripped from it. Through the small glass window, we saw the child look up, open its mouth, and let out a silent scream. Then, it simply ceased to be. The lights returned to normal. The hum stopped. Everything was still. We sat in the break room in silence afterward. Ross bandaged a cut on his palm he didn't remember getting. Lonnie sipped coffee with trembling hands. I asked the question that had been growing inside me all week. Why do we stay? Ross didn't hesitate. Because someone has to. Lonnie nodded. The things that show up here, they're not all bad. Some are lost. Some are hurt. Some are just looking for home. And some, I asked, they're looking for a way in. I thought about that for a long time. Then Lonnie reached in her pocket and slid something across the table. A new ID badge. My name. My photo. Probation's over, she said. You're one of us now. Before I left, I checked the kennel log one last time. A chihuahua with a heart murmur had made it through surgery. A cat with a broken leg had purred when I changed her bandages. A rabbit that hadn't moved in 2 days had suddenly begun eating again. Little wins. Real ones. Amid the horrors, there were moments of joy. As I walked out into the pale morning light, I saw a woman standing near the edge of the lot, holding a leash dog. She smiled as the beagle barked happily and tugged at the leash. I didn't recognize her. I didn't recognize the dog. But as I passed them, the beagle looked up at me and winked. Both eyes matched. Still, something about its smile felt human. I didn't ask. Some things at Cedar Ridge are best left unanswered. I climbed into my car. The pet hospital shrank in my rearview mirror as I drove away. But I knew I'd be back. Because once you've worked the night shift here, the place doesn't let you go. And some part of me didn't want it to. Because here's the truth. Amid the terror, the darkness, and the impossible, there's purpose in caring for creatures that don't belong. There's hope in helping them recover. And there's a strange, beautiful reward in knowing you've survived the night. Again,